Information operations during active combat. Their purpose and the most relevant Russian disinformation today. In early August, something unexpected occurred. News began circulating about a breakthrough by the Ukrainian armed forces into, believe it or not, the territory of the Russian Federation. Russian soldiers started surrendering en masse, and conscripts could not hold back the advance of well-prepared, experienced, battle-hardened Ukrainian troops equipped with a full array of Western-style armored vehicles and gear. Each day, more and more settlements fell under Ukrainian control. The Russian leadership could not afford not to respond to such military failure, so military-related information operations were set in motion. Let's break down what these information operations were. Why are Russian media actively spreading fakes about the destruction of the Ukrainian armed forces contingent during Ukraine's offensive actions, while the offensive itself continues in reality? For example, the commander of the Akhmat Special Forces, Apti Alaudinov, a Kadyrov unit in the Russian army, reported on Russian TV that the front has stabilized and the Russian army is encircling the remaining contingent of Ukrainians in Russian settlements.
The situation is under control. Most of the territory where the enemy was has already been completely sealed off. The enemy is being purged from the settlements where the enemy is, and they are being driven out or wherever they are. I would say that all the units of the Russian Ministry of Defense have really got engaged in destroying the enemy at a good pace, and the enemy is suffering losses that it has probably never suffered during the entire period of the special military operation. Apti Alaudinov, commander of the Akhmat Special Forces.
Russian media spread false information about the destruction of Ukrainian forces to demoralize Ukrainian troops and citizens, create a misleading narrative of Russian dominance, and weaken international support for Ukraine. By portraying Ukraine's offensive as unsuccessful, they aim to undermine the credibility of Ukrainian leadership and sow doubt among Ukraine's allies. Why is the narrative that the invasion of the Kursk region is orchestrated by Western intelligence agencies and involves hundreds of, for example, French mercenaries who are allegedly committing atrocities against civilians being actively promoted? This narrative is propagated to shift the blame for Russia's failures onto external forces, fostering a sense of victimhood and rallying domestic support. By accusing Western countries of direct involvement, Russia seeks to justify its actions and escalate tensions, while their fabricated stories of atrocities are designed to incite fear and hatred among the population, thereby strengthening internal unity against a perceived external enemy. Why is Russia hypocritically calling on the international community to condemn Ukraine's attack on the Kursk region and demanding a UN Security Council meeting, while it has been destroying cities and villages in Ukraine for years and killing civilians? Russia's call for international condemnation and a UN Security Council meeting is a strategic move to deflect attention from its own war crimes and atrocities in Ukraine. By portraying itself as a victim of aggression, Russia seeks to gain sympathy and support from other nations, distract from its ongoing violations, and attempt to isolate Ukraine diplomatically. This hypocrisy is a calculated attempt to manipulate international opinion while continuing its aggressive actions with impunity. Simultaneously, stories about the involvement of Western intelligence services in the invasion of the Kursk region and about hundreds of French mercenaries allegedly raping civilians are being actively spread in the information space. This narrative aims to sow distrust among the Russian population and strengthen anti-Western sentiments, accusing the West of waging a direct war on Russian territory. These actions once again highlight the double standards of Russian propaganda, which tries to portray the aggressor as the victim. At the same time, we can see how Ukrainian forces calmly occupy the Kursk region, liberate from Russian influence.
Тушенки. Да, чтобы мы всем не развозили, просто отдайте там, кому надо. Нет, это все вам.
Это все вам. Поделитесь. Вы что-то на улице знаете, кто и что не собирает.
Спасибо большое. Сейчас я бабу Галю позову, чтобы это скоро.
Возьмете.
Подождите, хлопчики, подождите, мои родные. Ой, Господи. Ой, дай Бог вас здоровья, хай вас Боженька береже.
Да, все нормально. Да, все хорошо, успокойтесь. Все нормально. Да, все хорошо.
And civilians feel relatively at ease until the Russians come to liberate them back.
Вот надо их окружить и уничтожить все. Просто ковровым, понимаете? Недаром, кстати, я надеюсь, что к этому и готовится, потому что недаром столько эвакуации.
Не будем
Иначе чего эвакуировать столько тысяч людей?
We have seen how Russia fights on the example of the ruins of Mariupol, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Vovchansk. And the list is far from complete. These cities were practically destroyed before being occupied by Russian forces. Meanwhile, we can observe the weakness of the Russian regime and the chaotic information operations they are trying to implement. They aim to demoralize Ukrainians, accuse them of war crimes, and somehow raise the morale of the Russians. They call on the world community to stop the Ukrainians after 3 years of devastating full-scale war and destruction of people's lives. So be aware of the information operations by which the aggressor is trying to save face at a time of perhaps its greatest weakness, because the truth will prevail and we will make every effort to ensure that it does.
We in the game.